Australia has declared that it wants to be net zero by 2050. There are many parts to this problem of greenhouse gas emissions, of course, but one of them is the way that cities are planned. Tone, here is a quote about Sydney, one of Australia's largest cities, from Philip Vivian, chair of the Australian chapter of the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat. Sydney's density is so low, it's just not funny. It's clearly inequitable, with workers being forced to live on the periphery, being forced to pay more, travel further to work. It's unsustainable. Now, he doesn't even begin to discuss the impact of urban sprawl on natural ecosystems or carbon emissions arising from, say, car dependency. Tone, I did a quick check online to see what he meant by low density. Sydney and Melbourne, Australia's two biggest cities, have average densities of about less than 3,000 people per square kilometer. Compare this with, say, Barcelona at 5,000 plus and Singapore at 8,000 plus. Is there a way forward? Can Australia reach its 2050 target without fundamentally rethinking its cities? What do you think?
Namal, thanks for the interest in Australia. And it's a very different country in many ways. We borrow from America and from UK, but we are, in many senses, the most urbanized country in the Western world or the OECD. 40% of the population live in just two cities. 60% live in five. And those cities are quite big. The two big cities, Melbourne and Sydney, that you mentioned, are very large cities by population. If they were in the United States, they'd be the 9th and 10th biggest cities there. They're bigger than Seattle and San Francisco and so on. But they are the most suburbanized cities. So, for instance, the metropolitan area of Sydney is a little over 12,000 square kilometres. And it's about the same in Los Angeles. But Los Angeles has twice the population of Sydney. And yet people think of Los Angeles being the most spread out, least dense city in the world. How did we get to that? You need to understand, how did we become this nation of suburban, detached homes on what we used to say a quarter-acre block? That was the ideal. How did that actually happen? And is it now so bad, so entrenched, that it can't be saved? Or what do you do to save it? And what I think I've been working on for the last half of my career is to work out how to fix the very thing that I hated when I was growing up. Suburbia runs through all parts of Australian society. It's 80% of the city is a suburb. And low density has always been taken to be the bane of sustainability. And it really is, because you've got a problem with people taking too much land, alienating that land by paving it over, moving more roads, more infrastructure. Instead of the Eden that people thought Australia was, what you've done is destroy paradise and put up a parking lot. And that has its roots in post-war arrangements in the country. So what you've got to understand is that between 1945 and 1973, Australia's population doubles in that period. So almost less than 30 years it doubles. And then it has doubled again to where we are now, almost. So it goes from 6.5 million or so after the war to almost 13 million, and now it's 26. But it's almost all of that growth happens in an annulus spreading out from the city. And the Europeans who came had come from poverty, often were people who were not wealthy in their own countries. They'd come as refugees, and they leapt on the idea that you could own your own home. To them, it was paradise.